came out well. Yeah.
Did you have a lot of doors slammed in your face by people who you wanted to talk to, saying, look, I just don't want to?
The only person who, and I don't know what I should tell you her name.
No, don't.
She was the teacher in the room where the kid went down to the washroom and set the fire. She was a late teacher, 24 years old, and I wanted to talk to her because she got her kids out on that room, and she allegedly pulled the alarm, the interior alarm. There's still a question whether she did it right away or got the kids out and then came back in and then pulled the alarm. And I asked her...
I can explain that for you because I was there.
What's that?
I can explain that for you because I was there.
This is Mickey Lombardo.
Okay.
Come on up.
Yeah, I love it.
You know, the teacher, I'm sitting in the room, the chief teacher, I remember like it was yesterday, just jumped up from her desk, ran out to the hallway, looked to the right, saw it was full of smoke, stepped back in, said, everybody out. She ran down the stairs, turned the fire alarm as we came down the stairs behind her. So there was a lot of questions about whether or not she did the right thing, and believe me, she did.
Right.
She did.
We've talked about that as well. Can I just say one thing real quick? One of the things that helped us was your book. Because all of us, the whole group of us that started meeting right after the WTTW came out, you know, we immediately all went out and got your book. So I think we owe you a lot for those of us that made it out that day.
I appreciate it.
And we still talk about the book.
Yeah,
so.
thank you. And this is the gentleman I'd like to hear more. Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, Mickey is a professor of criminal justice at Loyola. He's also a retired policeman in Chicago and Cook County for a little while.
You take the stand here.
Well, I agree with everything that was said. The young man that's the suspect, I mean, well, we think he's more than the suspect. I actually knew. He lived down the block from me. We didn't think much of it at the time, but as time went on, you know, he set my house on fire. I lived in a big apartment building, so he set, you know, the inside back stairway on fire, you know, where all the garbage cans were kept, the whole updraft issue. I mean, none of the apartments were damaged, but set a mailbox on fire in the neighborhood. So, you know, after the fire and we all got shipped off to first to Help of Christians and then to different public schools in the area. And then finally when we came back to the New Our Lady of the Angels, we all were interviewed by the state's attorney's office. Every child of age that had been there. And some of us got together before the interviews and said, look, we think we know who did it and we have to let the state's attorneys know. And we did. We sat there and told them this is what we think happened. And of course, nothing ever came of it. Nothing was ever made public until the Cicero incident with the fire at the bowling alley. Any questions? I don't know what else.
Where was it that you lived?
I lived at 618 North Ridgeway.
Ridgeway, okay.
Yeah, just south of Chicago Avenue. And I was in the U. I was in the 5th grade class, and the way the school was described is correctly. It was U-shaped. I was in the bottom of the U. But I was on the south end of the U, the classroom right across the little hallway on the north end of the U, they were trapped. We walked out like there was no problem at all, but the children right across the hallway from us, just to the north, were trapped in that room. They couldn't go out because that hallway was full of smoke. You mentioned Father Onyebeni. He actually came in, and there was a second door in that little hallway to that room that led to the fire escape that went downstairs. He actually had to break the door down. For whatever reason, it was closed, it couldn't be opened, it didn't unlock. He broke the door down and got the kids out that way. Some actually had already gone out the window and climbed over to the fire escape.
Mickey,
Go ahead. Yeah.
I remember I was at school, I was a junior at the time it happened in high school. But I remember when I was in grammar school, going at Our Lady of the Angels, going through this long, narrow hallway.
Yes.
Very narrow hallway.
On the second floor.
Yes, and I remember saying to myself at the time, this is a fire trap, this is a fire trap. and I didn't know anything about fires at the time. Was that hallway part of the reason so many kids perished?
Well, I'm not sure, but your recollections are correct. That's exactly how I remember it. Again, I'm on the bottom of the U, and there was another classroom to the, would have been to the north of us, and there was this narrow hallway between us that led to the fire escape. But also, like, out the front door of my room, it was very wide open. The stairs went downstairs, but to the right, it was very narrow. So they squeezed the classroom in that space, and the hallway became probably more narrow than that doorway there. And that's where all the smoke was that we saw when we came out of our room. And I mean, it's so ironic, it's such a tragedy that 3-4 feet away from us, these children were trapped, and we were sitting there fine. We didn't have a problem.
That little room that you talked about that was in the center.
Right, they called it the cheese box room.
I was in that room.
Were you?
And I was told that it was originally put into a library. And then they built that room to be a library, and then they needed the space, so they made it into a room
Possibly.
and stuff. And another thing, I remember even as being small, the original old building that was on the corner there, that staircase going up out of that, and that was first and second grade down there in the bottom floor. That hallway going up to the second floor was so, the stairs were so narrow. And as a little kid, I remember it being narrow and stuff. So that's how they built them, I don't know. But, yeah, I was in a cheese box.
Nikki,
One door.
Well, there were 2 doors, but the other one, for some reason, couldn't be open, whether it was nailed short.
One door that was open, right.
Right.
What about the impact of the tragedy on the neighborhood and the Italians?
You know, I never thought much about it until Dominic and I were talking about it more recently. Of course, the neighborhood was changing race-wise. But when you look at the other Italian communities on the west side of Chicago, they never changed. So what made Chicago Avenue different than Taylor Street, Grand Avenue? Well, the old North Side changed. They tore down Little Sicily and built Cabrini Green. But what made our neighborhood different? And it seems that consensus of opinion and people you talk to, it was the fire. People just left the community. They were so sad over what happened. I'll tell you another tragic story. The girl about 3 doors down from me died in the fire. And her parents were kind of not well-to-do. They were poor people, didn't have a car, and she didn't come home from school that day. So my father took the girl's mother and father from hospital to look for the girl. And my mother sat with me, my brother, and their other 2 children. So we have 4 young children and my mother. 12:30, after midnight, the parents, my father finally came back with the parents. They were the Fatacos. And I'll never forget how tragic it was. They found young Christine at the Cook County morgue. And the only way they were able to identify her was from her undergarments, because Ma sewed them together herself, because that's how poor they were, these people. So a lot of tragic stories like that. And I see we have 2 representatives from OLA here tonight. Thanks for coming. Thanks for keeping it alive.
And, well, okay, our next speaker is Paul Ciminello. Paul's sister perished in the fire, and Paul has agreed to say a few words.